Picture this. You sit down at a crowded table with a few friends on a Friday night, right? And you all clink your glasses together.
Right, the classic start to the weekend.
Exactly. It's this universally recognized scene of, connection and just unwinding. It seems simple, even celebratory.
Yeah, totally harmless on the surface.
On the surface. But if you look a little closer at the dynamics in that room, beneath the surface of that shared drink, there's this massive, boiling reservoir of unspoken human dread.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And fragility, just, waiting for an excuse to surface. Welcome to today's custom-tailored deep dive, everyone.
We like to think of a night out as just a fun escape, right?
Yeah.
Something light and breezy. But the underlying mechanics of why we gather and what happens when our social inhibitions drop are infinitely more complex than just ordering a round of drinks.
And that complexity is exactly what brings us to the source material today. Our objective is to unpack a really dense, brief, but profoundly philosophical piece of writing. It's titled Mortal Interactions and the Alcohol of Truth.
It's a fascinating text.
It really is, because it takes these incredibly mundane, everyday social behaviors, like having a drink with friends, and it bridges them to the literal end of our existence.
Yeah, that doesn't hold back.
No, it tackles the biggest existential questions we face: the unpredictable nature of life, our shared mortality, the struggle for authentic connection. And it grounds all of that in scenarios you probably experienced just last weekend.
What I love about it is how the author manages to strip away the pleasantries of modern society. They look at the raw biological and psychological realities underneath. I mean, we spend so much energy curating our lives, right?
Oh, absolutely. Managing our reputation.
Yeah, pretending we have ultimate control over our destinies. And this text systematically dismantles those illusions, starting with how we try to cope with just the sheer weight of being human.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the author starts right out of the gate with a highly debatable premise. They look at our relation to other human beings and ask, well, why is it that when some of us get a taste of alcohol, we start getting violent or deeply emotional?
Right, the sudden shift in personality.
Yeah, and they make this bold claim. They say, I feel like alcohol is the greatest tool that brings us together. And look, I have to push back on that word choice.
Oh, really? How come?
Calling it the greatest tool for connection feels like a massive stretch to me, especially when they immediately follow it up by talking about how it's used to vent pent-up trauma, like a tool for connection or a tool for chaos.
That's a fair point.
Yeah.
But to understand why the author elevates it to the greatest tool, we have to look at the psychological mechanics of human interaction.
Okay.
Most of our waking hours are spent heavily regulating our behavior. I mean, we suppress our frustrations, our fears, our traumas, just to function politely in society.
We have to, yeah. Otherwise, society falls apart.
Exactly. So your brain's prefrontal cortex is working overtime. Think of it as a strict bouncer at the door of your true emotions.
I love that. A bouncer checking IDs on your feelings.
Right. So the author isn't praising alcohol as, like, a health elixir. They're identifying it as the most efficient, universally utilized chemical bypass for that bouncer.
Ah, okay.
It forcibly lowers the drawbridge. It allows the genuine, often messy human being trapped inside to finally interact with the outside world.
That reframes the entire concept of the social drink for me. It's less about the beverage itself and more about scheduling a culturally acceptable moment to drop our armor.
Exactly.
I'm picturing it like a pressure release valve on a boiler.
Oh, that's a good way to look at it.
Or like tectonic plates beneath the Earth's surface. Day after day, as we deal with the stresses of just existing, these plates grind against each other. They build up immense pressure, and we hold it all together through sheer force of will.
Right.
So in this context, alcohol isn't generating the heat or creating the tension. It acts as the fluid that suddenly lubricates the fault line.
Yes.
And the friction slips. Sometimes it results in a small emotional tremor, like you confess a secret to a friend.
And sometimes it results in a massive earthquake, like a bar fight.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how the text views the fallout from those earthquakes. The source poses a really pointed question about the violence or emotional spillage that follows that drink. They ask, does it just happen by accident, or is it premeditated?
Premeditated, that's a heavy word to use for a night out.
It is. But by suggesting we use alcohol to vent out our pent-up trauma, the author implies that the friction we experience with others isn't random. If this release is premeditated, even subconsciously, it means we're intentionally seeking out that altered state.
Because the alternative is what? Holding that tectonic pressure in forever.
Exactly. which is biologically unsustainable.
Wow. So we are practically choosing the time and the place for the fault line to slip.
Pretty much.
We walk into a loud, crowded room knowing full well that we are consuming something designed to dismantle our self-control. So when the fight breaks out or the tears start flowing, it isn't a glitch in the system.
No, it's the system functioning exactly as we secretly intended.
We needed an alibi to let the trauma out, and the drink provides it.
Which naturally leads to the core question driving this entire philosophical inquiry. Why is the baseline human condition generating so much of this trauma in the first place?
Right. Why are we all walking around so tense?
Why are the tectonic plates under such constant heavy pressure for every single one of us? And the text answers this by pointing to the fundamental precariousness of our existence.
Yeah. The author uses a striking combination of words here. They describe life as frugal and unpredictable.
Frugal is such an interesting choice there.
It's brilliant. We usually think of being frugal in terms of, clipping coupons or stretching a budget.
Right, saving money.
Yeah, but applying it to life implies a severe scarcity. A scarcity of time, a scarcity of guarantees, safety. It highlights that the universe isn't freely handing out infinite tomorrows.
We're on a budget.
We are operating on a very strict, unforgiving allowance of days.
And tying directly into that frugality is the stark reality of our physical bodies. I mean, the modern world gives us the illusion that if we just find the right routine, we can conquer our biology.
Oh, absolutely. The biohacking trend.
Yes, we track our sleep, we optimize our diets, we schedule our lives years in advance. But the text explicitly shatters this illusion. It points out that all we can really ask for is good health, but it delivers a really sobering reality check. It says, as is the case most of the time, it's often out of our control.
And that's terrifying. You can do everything right, follow every piece of medical advice, and your biology might simply have other plans.
Exactly.
A single microscopic cellular error or, a random accident on a Tuesday afternoon, and that frugal allowance of time you thought you had is instantly revoked.
It's gone.
That lack of control over the vehicle we are traveling in, that's the source of that deep underlying dread we try so hard to medicate away at the bar.
It really is. And realizing how little sovereignty we have over our own health and longevity, I mean, that could easily drive a person into nihilism.
Yeah, easily. Nothing matters, let's just drink.
Right. But the author's philosophical pivot here is profound. This shared unpredictability, this mutual lack of control, is presented as the ultimate tool for empathy.
Empathy.
Yes.
Yeah.
The source argues that this mutual precarity is exactly why we must value that stranger more. Everyone is subject to the exact same unpredictable fate.
Wow, okay. Let's think about how that applies to your daily life. It changes the fundamental geometry of how you interact with people. Think about the fundamental attribution error.
Remind us what that is again.
It's that psychological bias where we judge others by their actions, but we judge ourselves by our intentions.
Wow. Yes.
So you're driving to work, someone aggressively cuts you off in traffic. The immediate instinct is to view them as an antagonist. Like they're an obstacle maliciously placed in your day to ruin it.
Right, they're a villain.
Or you're in the grocery store and the person in front of you is moving painfully slow and that irritation just bubbles up. You view them as a total nuisance.
It's just the everyday friction of sharing a crowded world.
Exactly. But when you apply the author's logic, that person in the car or that stranger in the grocery store isn't just an obstacle. They're carrying their own invisible, heavy trauma.
Yeah.
They are facing the exact same biological fragility that you are. Their health is out of their control, and their life is just as frugal and unpredictable.
It completely reframes them.
It does. Seeing them not as an antagonist, but as a fellow traveler navigating a fundamentally terrifying and uncertain existence, it forces a shift in perspective. You value them more because you recognize the shared burden of simply being alive.
It replaces that frustration with a shared solidarity in our vulnerability. We're all walking out onto the exact same incredibly thin ice.
Thin ice, yeah. It's a
No.
great image.
And the realization that the ice could break under any of us at any moment, it makes the trivial annoyances, like someone holding up the checkout line, seem absurd to get angry about. You recognize the humanity in their struggle because it perfectly mirrors your own.
Okay, but here's where it gets really interesting. A text that emphasizes valuing strangers, recognizing our mutual trauma, walking on thin ice together. It sounds like it's building toward a philosophy of complete pacifism.
It really does. You expect the conclusion to be something like, just be endlessly accommodating, avoid all conflict, turn the other cheek.
Right. Never push back.
Yeah.
Yet, the author introduces a piece of advice from one of their mentors. And that mentor happens to be the rapper and entrepreneur 50 Cent.
Yes.
And the quote they highlight is, "I don't want problems, but if you have a problem, then bring it on."
It's quite a shift in tone.
It's a huge shift. At first glance, injecting that specific quote into a meditation on human fragility feels aggressively confrontational.
It sounds like a total contradiction to the mandate to value that stranger more.
It sounds like an invitation to a fight, which goes against the entire premise of empathetic understanding we just talked about.
I get why it seems that way. But if we connect this to the bigger picture of the source material, it serves as a crucial balancing mechanism. It introduces a deeply stoic framework for boundary setting.
Okay, how so?
Well, empathy and radical acceptance of life's fragility do not require you to become a passive victim to someone else's unmanaged trauma.
Ah.
The Stoic philosophy centers on the dichotomy of control, clearly separating what you can influence from what you cannot. You cannot control a stranger's actions, but you have absolute control over your response.
I see. So the first part of the quote, "I don't want problems," establishes that baseline preference for peace. You aren't seeking out the friction.
Precisely. It acknowledges the preference for harmony. But the second half, if you have a problem, then bring it on. That is the radical acceptance of external chaos.
Bring it on, not as a threat, but as an acceptance.
Right. The author is suggesting that you can fully recognize a stranger's internal pain without allowing them to project that pain onto you destructively. You can't control the weather, right?
Right.
But you can build a house that withstands the hurricane. Bring it on means accepting that friction will inevitably arrive and having the internal architecture to face it head on without letting it destroy your internal peace.
It's a refusal to let the unpredictable nature of other people dictate your emotional state. You don't want the storm, but when the storm arrives, you simply stand your ground, pull up your collar, and let it pass over you.
Exactly. You don't take it personally because you understand the mechanics driving it.
And you possess that unshakable internal grounding because you understand a broader, more fundamental truth about the nature of the storm itself.
Right.
The conflict, the aggression, the friction, it all lacks permanence.
It's all temporary.
Which brings us to the heaviest, most unavoidable equalizer that the source introduces. Why is it so easy to let these conflicts wash over us? Why are the everyday dramas so temporary? The author drops the absolute hammer with this realization, they write. "Centuries from now, none of my listeners will exist."
This raises an important question about how we construct our identities and fuel our daily anxieties. The text strips away all pretense with a really basic biological fact. Everything that grows must eventually die.
It's bleak, but true.
But think about it. We spend an immense amount of cognitive energy worrying about our social standing, our careers, how we are perceived by others. We try to build monuments to ourselves, hoping to achieve some form of permanence in a world defined by its impermanence.
Oh, man. We agonize over an embarrassing thing we said 5 years ago, or stress ourselves to the point of illness trying to impress a boss who won't even remember our name in a decade.
Exactly. And the author attacks that exact anxiety by stating clearly, centuries from now, none will remember you or your troubles because everyone is dealing with something.
Everyone's too busy worrying about themselves.
Right. The world is entirely populated by highly mortal beings who are completely consumed by their own precarity. No one has the bandwidth to memorialize you. Striving desperately to be remembered to leave a permanent mark is an exercise in futility. As the text concludes on this point, whatever you do, you'll be forgotten, no matter how hard you try.
Being completely erased from history sounds so bleak and terrifying on the surface. But when you really process the mechanism of what the author is saying, it translates into something incredibly liberating.
Completely liberating.
Think of it like this. You are building a massive, highly intricate sandcastle right at the tide line on a beach.
Okay, I can picture that.
You are pouring hours into carving the towers, smoothing the walls, digging a complex moat. But you know with absolute non-negotiable certainty that the ocean is going to rise tonight and wash the entire structure away.
Yep, the tide always comes in.
By tomorrow morning, the beach will be perfectly flat sand again. There will be absolutely zero evidence you or your castle were ever there.
It's a physical manifestation of the frugality and ultimate erasure the text discusses. The tide is the unavoidable equalizer.
But the magic of that scenario is in how the certainty of destruction changes your motivation.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you know the ocean is coming, you aren't building the sandcastle for posterity. You aren't building it so someone can admire it next week. The guaranteed erasure of your work is exactly what gives you the freedom to just enjoy the physical, tactile act of building it today.
That makes perfect sense.
You are doing it simply for the joy of feeling the wet sand in your hands in the present moment. If nothing you do is going to be remembered, you are suddenly freed from the crushing, paralyzing weight of legacy.
That realization is the exact pivot the text makes to deliver its final philosophical imperative. Because the tide is coming for all of us, and because we will all be forgotten, the author forces the reader to evaluate their daily motivations.
Yeah.
They ask a really blunt question: are you living for yourself, or are you pleasing others?
So, what does this all mean? The author has walked us through this incredible progression. We started with the clumsy ways we use alcohol to vent our hidden traumas. We examined the terrifying biological unpredictability of our health, which forces us to view strangers with deeper empathy. We explored the stoic boundary setting needed to protect our peace, and finally arrived at the guaranteed erasure of our existence by the tides of time. And the author takes all of that heavy philosophical weight and distills it into one actionable directive for you, the listener.
And what's the directive?
Do you, and take it a day at a time, and you'll be immersed in the full experience.
It is the ultimate synthesis of the human condition. Embracing our shared mortality is the key that unlocks us from the prison of external expectations.
Say more about that.
Well, if everyone else is navigating their own hidden traumas, and everyone else is going to disappear into the exact same historical void that you are, then altering your authentic self to meet their expectations is a tragic misallocation of your resources.
It's a waste.
It is a waste of a highly frugal, deeply unpredictable life.
You only have a limited number of hours to play in the sand. Spending them building a castle to someone else's specifications, knowing it will all wash away regardless, is the real tragedy. Taking it a day at a time transforms from just like a tired cliche into a profound philosophical stance here. When you stop projecting your anxieties into a future that isn't guaranteed and stop carrying the weight of a past that will be forgotten, you anchor yourself in the present.
The present moment.
It is the only state of being where you can actually be immersed in the full experience.
That is beautifully said.
Oh,
And this leaves us with one lingering thought, an idea that isn't explicitly written in the text, but serves as the invisible thread tying this entire philosophical journey together. Think back to the very beginning, to that crowded Friday night and the clinking glasses. The author started by looking at how we rely on physical alcohol as a crude tool to lower our prefrontal cortex, to strip away our social inhibitions and force the raw truth of our human experience out into the open.
right. We drink to give ourselves permission to be authentic, if only for a few hours.
A temporary, chemically induced authenticity.
But when you look at the entirety of the psychological and existential framework we just unpacked, a deeper reality emerges. Perhaps the ultimate alcohol of truth isn't a physical beverage you order at a bar.
I like where this is going.
Perhaps the most deeply intoxicating realization a human being can experience is the profound, sobering acceptance of their own impermanence. Truly internalizing that you and everyone you have ever tried to impress will eventually be completely forgotten by history. That strips away social anxiety far more effectively than any drink.
Wow. Yeah, it really does.
Because realizing that your entire legacy is just a sandcastle waiting for the tide might be the ultimate liberating permission slip you need to finally stop pleasing others and start truly living for yourself today.